right. Hello, GenRight Nation. It is April 22nd. I am Tony Pellegrino, and this is Tech Talk. Tech Talk is something that we do every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're joining us live, thank you very much. It's part of the fun with being able to interact back and forth. It's simple to do. All you do is ask a question by typing in a comment. It does require that you log in to your YouTube ID, right? Make sure that they know who you are. That allows you to then open up the comments, include as much information as you can about the question you have. And if it's something broad and generic, then that's no problem. But if it's something specific about your vehicle, then I need enough details in order to be able to answer that. We are 100% here to talk about your favorite subject and mine, Jeeping, how to drive them, build them, everything related. So you are at the right place if that's what you're wanting to do. Today's show, excuse me, all of a sudden I got a hoarse voice. Today's show is about the little TJ that we want to build. I've made some decisions on what we're going to do, and we're going to share those with you here in just a second. We've got a few things to get to before we get to that. One is I want to talk about what's happening around GenRight, right? Last week we showed you that we've got the brand new frame shop bumper with the, I put the Warn RC 9.0 in there, and then I've also put my 9.5 CTI in there, and this is of course on new Terramoto that we're building. So, and then I showed you guys the rear bumper as well, that it's super tight and it complements our brand new dovetail corners. So, really a lot of good stuff that we've been working on around here. In addition to that, I want to show you our brand new gas pedal. I actually have one, excuse me, here, and it's all aluminum, and this is the exact same one that I've been running in Terramoto since whatever 2012, and we're now making it a production version that we can make available to everybody, because we figured out that there's very few options available out on the market. So what's cool about this one is that you can move that bolt and adjust the pedal ratio as well as where the cable pulls from. So you can have it be real mild as you hit the pedal, or you can have it crack right open and go to full throttle. So lots of adjustability, super lightweight. You almost don't even know what's in your hand. Don't be surprised if you move to a fly-by-wire kind of a pedal setup. Most of it's plastic, and this is actually more sturdy than you'd think. So anyways, wanted to show you that. Jamie took a couple pictures, so a couple different pictures so you could see what it looked like. It is really cool. And then of course our dovetail corners. We've got a big batch of them in now. They're shipping, and these things are definitely awesome. Today's tech tip. Okay, so today I've answered several questions about trailers. Now, we did an entire Tech Talk episode a couple years back on trailers specifically. I'm going to do an abbreviated version today. First off, there are different types of trailers, right? There's an enclosed trailer that you tow behind your motorhome or you tow behind your truck. There's a smaller kind of a camper that maybe you'd tow behind your Jeep. Did you have something, Jim?
Just a call.
Oh, okay. Then you've got an open trailer that you would tow behind your truck or motorhome as well. So all of these trailers are very important to know what your vehicle's tow capacity is. Just because you have a Class A motorhome doesn't mean that it's rated high enough for you to tow a Jeep on a trailer. Some Class A's, especially if they're gas, are 5,000 pound tow capacity. Well, your Jeep weighs that much. So that means you're flat towing that thing. Forget about putting it on a trailer. The other thing is, like, I've got a steel trailer, and you can also get an aluminum trailer, which would be, you know, literally half the weight. So if you're close on the weight, then that makes a big difference. Now, what I can tell you is a trailer like this, you got to be careful. You can not only put your Jeep in there, but you can put too much stuff, and the next thing you know, you're going to be over capacity. So you definitely want to be careful on that. If you have a big build Jeep like we do, this door on the back needs to be 8 foot high and 8 foot wide. Otherwise, your Jeep will not fit inside. So these are very important things. The other thing is I chose this trailer. By the way, I've got about 200,000 miles on this trailer. I have torsion axles, and I run the 14-ply all steel tires. I don't know, they call it all steel. Obviously there's rubber, but that's what they call it. It is a very heavy duty tire, rated for like 4,000 or 4,500 pounds at 90 miles an hour. So, and if you're driving across Texas, that's how fast you're going to be going. So you definitely want tires that are rated above or beyond whatever you'll be doing, or you're going to have trouble. So just a few things that I wanted to point out to people. You definitely want to be careful and know what your capacities are, and then don't get too big of a trailer. The other thing, I don't know if I got a picture of it. No, I didn't. In my enclosed, I have ramps inside that allow me to drive over the top of the inner fenders, and that also gives you a bunch of storage underneath the Jeep when it's inside. So there's a lot of cool things, and we can always go into that in more detail, but that was my tech tip for today. All right, today's show is about this little Jeep and us building it. We're going to be installing our Legend kit on this Jeep, which is made for both the TJ and the LJ and the YJ and the CJ. Like, it fits pretty much everything. It was originally developed back on my Growler, which Jamie now has in an updated version, but this was what it looked like back when I had it on 42-inch MTRs. The suspension works great. I always ran the double triangulated. We're going to show you that today. And of course, back then, we only talked about doing it with coilover shocks, but we're going to be doing it with coil springs and regular shocks. So big difference. And of course, as everybody knows, we picked up this set of 392 JL axles from a local junkyard, our buddy Tommy out at Sergeant Jeep. And we're going to be cutting off some of this stuff to make it fit under our TJ. So we're going to spin around here in a second. I want to give you a quick recap on what the Legend kit is. It's a 3-link front, 4-link rear. This whole thing was originally designed around Curry axles. Obviously, we're putting JL axles in. So that's going to limit us to a 37-inch tire, which is just fine because I'm only stretching this to a 100-inch wheelbase. Okay, there's a close-up of the 4-link. Now this is a single triangulated 4-link. We're going to be doing a double triangulated. There's a close-up of the 3-link front. And now we're going to spin around and we're going to talk about everything we've got laid out here. And then we'll come back over here when we're toward the end of the show. All right, let me turn this light while Jamie's spinning around. There we go. Okay. So, let's see. I'm going to stand more toward the back, James. Okay. This kit, and I'm gonna get way back here. Okay. So we kind of laid this whole thing out so that it's under the Jeep in about the right spot, right? And you can see we're going to add a bridge to the top of the rear axle. I'm going to leave the coil spring purchase, and I'm going to cut off this other stuff, the other suspension mounts, and we're going to add on the GenRight suspension mounts that come with the Legend suspension kit. Okay, they're much more heavy duty. You know, these are about 1/8 inch thick, and ours are 1/4 inch thick, so they're way beefy. And we use a nice large 9/16 bolt that's grade 8 on all of our stuff with special unitorque nuts. So you can see we laid out, hopefully they can see, James, that the double triangulated here. Rear suspension. This is an entire cross member that gets welded in, and it connects to this belly up skid plate. And this skid plate's available in aluminum or steel. So you can choose whatever you want depending on how hard you're going to be driving. And this is the regular that I showed you on the screen over there, the single triangulated suspension mount. It's much more simple. It just slides on the frame and then you're good to go. So you'd actually put it on, you know, the frame like this. So you'd have the lower link and the upper link, and those work great. And you know, you can buy them from us, this bracket kit, for $149, and you got to weld it together yourself, or you can buy the pre-welded one. I think it's $349 or $449. I honestly, you know, we've got the fixtures and everything to weld these things together and make sure that when it's all done and cooled down, it comes back to the right size. That's a little tricky if you're doing it on yourself. But if you can pay the extra, it makes the install go so much faster. And we give you, there's a big, I don't know, it's like 60 pages of instructions on where to put everything. So really what it's about is getting the stuff off the frame, get all the stock stuff out of the way, but you want to do it cleanly. Remember, your frame is only 1/8 inch thick, okay? So if you're scoring it with a cutoff wheel or a plasma, you're actually, you know, taking away half the strength of the frame by doing that. So you want to be careful and creep up on those things and get them off as clean as you can without gouging the frame. And now I'm going to move up a little bit, and I wanted to show you, you know, the lower control arms are 250 1/4 inch thick wall, and the upper control arm is 120 or about 1/8 inch thick. The track bar, this is also 1/4 inch thick, chromoly. So these are very beefy as well. This gets a pre-welded Johnny joint on the frame side, and then it gets a Heim on the axle side. So that's that way you don't get any shake out of it. And the Heim's got a 3/4 inch bolt, and this side's got a 9/16 bolt. So you got a ton of strength in there for when you're winching or, you know, off-camber stuff. Basically, you know, that track bar is what keeps the suspension under the Jeep, so the whole front axle. This does include limit straps. This does include genuine Johnny joints all the way around. And all those, if you don't know about those are serviceable. They're quiet, and a little bit of grease every now and then, you're in good shape. Now, the exception being up here. So because we're going to use this stock ear on the top of the differential, you can either retain this you know, rubber mounted style from the factory, or you can press this out and actually press a Johnny joint in there, and then you still use this brand new fabricated upper piece that we give you that takes the place of a Johnny joint. Okay, so we're going to reuse the coil springs, we're going to reuse the shock mounts. You could even reuse these lower control arm mounts if it made it a little easier for you. We're not going to. We're going to put on our super heavy duty ones. Look, these are all formed. They're really nice. They're made to fit the axle. You just cut off the old stuff and weld on the new good stuff. And what I'm really excited about is this stuff. Okay, so when you do this, then you can put on our high steer kit. So I could either leave these knuckles, or I could go with a reed, or I'd probably end up going with a reed knuckle. And you move all the steering and the track bar, that all has to move together. You're going to put on our brand new mount that goes around the coil spring bucket, okay? And that raises up the track bar from here on up, and then that allows you to move the steering up and get it out of harm's way. You know, that's a real problem. This, again, this is 1/4 inch thick, heat treated chromoly. These are all pre-welded because we know you have a JL, so that's really easy for us to do because we know the width. And boy, all this stuff just really gives you a head start into getting your suspension done. So the idea is we just reuse the coil springs that are here, the shocks that are here, or if your shocks are worn out, you can get some, upgraded Kings, Foxes, something like that. So those are all options that you have. And then with the high steer, I'm going to switch the stock pitman arm out for our twisted pitman arm, which if you've never heard of that, if you look right now, this joint right here, so this is called a tie rod end, and it's already almost at its max, right? So what we do is we twist the pitman arm and we put the joint in its neutral position where it's the strongest. And then when you droop out further, because we're going to put longer travel shocks on here, then the joint doesn't get maxed out and break. Okay, so this is all part of what we did many years ago, back when I was talking about my YJ, and figured all this stuff out. You do not have to move the steering box. That is the last thing you want to do. And we do make a little skid plate for this, so we'll be covering that. And then, we're gonna cut off all this stock stuff, get it out of the way. We had already upgraded the drive shafts on this, so we're just gonna have those extended. They just retube them. And we'll convert the yokes on these over to match the drive shafts we have, so we'll get some 1350 yokes. And this is gonna be one cool little wheeler. Now, yeah, it'll be limited to a 37, but man, that between the flat belly and a 37-inch tire with great axles, and remember, these are already geared down with lockers. So literally, we don't even need to open these things up. They're coming with bigger brakes, front and rear discs, right? Like this is going to be a quantum leap forward. They're wider. Everything about it is really going to make this little TJ turn into just an awesome wheeler. So I'm pretty excited about this. And that was the main crux of what I wanted to share with you guys, so that you understood what comes with this thing. Okay, do we have any questions so far, Jay?
Not that I can see. I'm trying to do both.
Okay. Yeah, I really wanted to get, make sure I presented everything to you guys before we start to answer
there were a
questions.
lot of highs from NorCal. Nick
nice.
said sell it and build a race car. Nick Weaponich.
Oh, nice.
Andrew Harris said my Class A is rated for 5,500.
There you
I
go.
used to flat tow it and honestly feel safer on a trailer.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you need to use the press-in uniball johnny joint for the front upper?
If you want to keep this style, otherwise what happens is you get a little tower like this. Now, normally this wouldn't be a big deal because you don't have this, what they call fad on the JL axle. If you got a junkyard axle, this would just be smooth, and you weld on this little tower, but it would go on the passenger side. We don't typically like to put anything on the passenger side. You got to run the exhaust there and stuff. I like to keep that as open as possible. TJ frame's pretty narrow. So this is a great option. Now you could build a bridge, but everything you do here gets bigger, right? That means you have less up travel because it's all coming into the bottom of the radiator. So unless you've really been under one of these vehicles and looking at what's going on, you start running out of up travel real quick. I don't know if they can see from here, James. This is the radiator, the bottom of the radiator, and the radiator hose. I mean, it's right there. So, that hangs lower than the oil pan. So it's one of those things that, unless you buy a custom radiator, but you're just taping dollar bills on, right? So it's all part of what's going on.
Mr. Rick Star 321, will the steering box brace you sell work with the 03 to 06 big bore PSC box?
It will not. It will not. In fact, it won't work with the 03 to 06 anything. Because in 03 they switched to the Mercedes box, and it doesn't have that same ability to hook around like this one does. So that's a little bit tricky, and I'm really a fan of that. I am trying to develop a different steering box brace for that, but I'm actually more of a fan that you convert over to the Saginaw box like we do on our tracer kits. We stock these things, and it bolts right in, and then you can run the brace that we have. So, and that box is already ported for a RAM, so if you want to do the RAM assist either right away or down the road, you can. But that's a much better quality kit. The reason I love the Saginaw box, you guys got to understand, is it is adjustable. You can adjust. Now it requires taking it out, but we set it up with the right feel. Sometimes power steering is too smooth and soft, right? That it makes the vehicle squirrely. We add a little bit of tension to it. It has like a heavier feel, and that makes the vehicle less twitchy. And that's very important. You don't even realize it until you drive one. You go, oh my God, this is way better. So that's how we set all of our boxes up, and you can only do that in the Saginaw.
We had another question. Will you have to move the coil spring mounts on the axles?
Yes. So it does. They're not in the exact same locations. So yeah, you do have to move them. So I've got a couple choices, which is why I had these out last week, right? So I could try and cut these off and move them. I could just buy new stuff. This is like factory Dorman stuff for a TJ, and then, cut off the other stuff without worrying about how nice I kept it, and, lob on one of these that takes the factory coil spring, or even modify it, just take it over to the bandsaw and cut it off and, get it so it's a little more compact, because we don't need this track bar mount. I mean, if you look at this stuff, this is like so cheesy. This is can they see this pretty good on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. This piece of metal is folded over to give you confidence. It's not even attached. There's a courtesy weld on the inside. It's super thin. I mean, that's your track bar mount. I mean, that's like scary. Now it's fine if you're on 32-inch tires, but when you're on 37s, no bueno. So, and then in the rear, I got new mounts that I can just drop on this thing in the proper location, and or again try and reuse those. But yeah, it's easier for me to just lob them off, and those things are cheap, so that's a good way to go.
Someone said, "Is that the standard Legend kit? Sorry, I joined late. I should be stoned."
Yes. So, couple things that we mentioned if you're joining late. So this, I have just outlined what is standard and what is optional. Okay, single triangulated is normal Legend, double triangulated is optional. This is not normally the way that we present a Legend kit because we always do coilover suspension. Okay, so we are doing coil springs and regular shocks on this build. Okay, and part of it is, actually, I'll be honest, that's not the way I would build a Jeep. I'm doing it to demonstrate to you folks how to save money. Okay, so yeah, this would not be how I do it at all. I am going to stretch this 5 inches. I'm going to get this to a 100-inch wheelbase, and that means the front's going to move forward a little bit. And that 100-inch wheelbase is what you need to run a 37-inch tire. That is the proper length to height ratio that you need. Okay, you may have never heard that before. We have an on-hold thing that talks about the Magic 100. I know on our website it talks about the Magic 100, and I discovered that 20 years ago, and that became our coined phrase, second only to do it right the first time. So, all right. More questions, Jim?
Nothing right now.
Okay. So, look, if you're going to go out and buy brand new shocks, and you're going to buy high quality shocks, then you're really in a position to just move the coilovers. Okay? Because coilovers are only about $500 per pair more than your standard high quality shocks. Now, yeah, you got to buy a $400, shock mount kit, but really, you're going to go through all this work and not just go to coilovers? So those are those are the things we always talk about. But, okay, so yeah, by the time you're done putting on the coilovers and the shock mounts, you're probably in for $4 or $5 grand. So, plus, if you're not doing it yourself, then you're paying somebody. So, that's a pretty big uptick in price. So this is, we'll be able to show you how to do this for a lot less. Yeah.
Jeep Adventures asked, what is your ideal amount of total angle between the arms for double triangulation? I don't know if they're referring to this angle or...
Okay. So I'm not sure I understand the question either, but here's how I'm going to answer it. Can you see way back here, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. So the distance between the lower control arm mount and the upper control arm mount, if you measure that vertically, in the front or the rear needs to be at least 8 inches. Okay, at least. If you don't have that amount of separation between the links, you will burn through parts like crazy and or rip the brackets off if you ever are braking and hit something hard. Okay, now over at the other end, that's a completely different story. The other end is part of what sets the entire suspension and how it dictates how much anti-squat you have. So we've figured out what the proper anti-squat is. And look, you're working underneath the body and you have a limited amount of space. So we've maximized everything we can do, on the frame, underneath the body with our kit. And if you missed it, for that person that joined late, this is the single triangulated mounting brackets. And so you triangulate the uppers, not so much the lowers, where this is the lower, or double triangulated. So this has got everything on it. The front's always a 3-link, so that's what you get there.
Michael Costin, is the Vector double or single triangulated rear?
Okay, good question. So I was hoping somebody would ask this. Part of the reason when we first introduced the Legend kit, we only did the single triangulation was because people weren't lengthening them enough, right? Some people were just putting it on and maybe only going 3 inches longer. Where I was telling you need to be at that 100-inch wheelbase. Well, that only lasted for like a year or two, and then everybody wanted to go to 40s. Well, to go to 40s, you need to be a lot longer. And you got to understand, everybody, when you go to a bigger tire, that means your axle gear ratio is lower. You instantly go to a 538. Then you've also got lower transfer case gears, right? So you'll be at a 4-to-1. Well, what that does is it makes the amount of torque your vehicle can apply to move the tires really high. And that high torque can make the vehicle feel very unstable. Okay, now, over the years, we've gotten into a JL, a JK, those things are, 118-inch wheelbase. Well, the double triangulated doesn't affect that as much. So yes, on the longer vehicles, so whether it's the Elite or the Vector, those are double triangulated in the rear right from the get-go, 3-link in the front. So what we're showing you here, as long as you keep this low and on 37s, you can do the double triangulated. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why do I want double triangulated? Because it is not only bind free, but it has no rear steer. And if anything, it actually has rear steer a couple degrees in the direction you want it to go. So normally what happens is when you're off-road, if you need to stay on a certain line, so say the front tires start climbing something and you need the rear tire to follow. Well, if you need that rear tire to follow, you have to oversteer on the front to get the rear tire to catch. Well, in a double triangulated, you have to think about that. The rear tire will follow the front tire because of the way it works. And that's a huge advantage. If you've never driven a double and by the way, every single rock buggy out there is double triangulated. Okay, so it works. It's proven. It's what everybody wants. Like it is the setup. And you'll find it on every vehicle I drive. So That's why we're doing that. So
On Michael Costin's question,
Yeah.
Are you cutting the passenger side upper control arm axle mount off of those axles for this build?
Meaning this one.
I would assume.
Heck yeah, I don't want that thing sticking up. That's getting a sawzall, and it'll take about 60 seconds to get it off of there.
And then someone else asked, what is the ideal wheelbase for an LJ on 37s?
For an LJ, well, so an LJ's already 103, so you're already there. And you can easily stretch an LJ another 5 by removing the faux rear cross member, moving the factory tank back, or our tank, whatever you got, and then you get another 5 inches instantly. So,
So on top of that question,
Okay.
they asked,
Sure.
how much would you stretch the front versus rear to get the ideal wheelbase for 37?
Okay, so you're already there for 37, okay? 103 is going to put you already there. Now, the reason everybody wants an LJ is because they want to go to 40s, and where you really want to be is 110, okay? So that's where I'm telling you, if you move the rear axle back at least 5 inches, you can move the front axle with our twisted pitman arm 4 inches forward, as much as 4 inches. Now, you got to do coilovers, okay? That's the other part of when you leave a coil spring, you only have about, 1 or so inch of float before that thing's not in the center on top anymore. So those are a lot of the reasons that everybody just moves the coilovers. Not only is it a much better quality shock, but it puts the spring and dampening control way out at the wheel. And that gives the vehicle a bunch more stability. When everything's tucked way in, you suddenly, you've got a lot of leverage on how this whole thing works. And I know it doesn't seem like much, but trust me, when you take the center of the tire over and you've got 15 inches, that's a ton. So, and if you don't believe me, go for a ride with me one time, and in 200 feet, I'll be able to change your mind. So,
We have a couple comments that the driver's front tire looks flat.
it is, yeah, only on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's only flat on the
fine.
bottom.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
on the lift.
These tires are, I think we looked them up, James. Weren't they from 2002?
They're old.
They're old.
They're old.
Yeah.
And it
And
was
by the way, even though we
sitting
put
in the
air in it, Jamie and I would have swore it looked like that the whole time we were wheeling.
So, Mr. Rickstar bought your shock hoops. Is there a set starting angle outbound that you would start? It's a JLR axle in a 04 TJ, 2.5 inch, 14 inch Bilstein coilovers.
Okay. So that's good. You got a little bit wider axle. I'm not sure what wheel offset you're running. Where you really need to pay attention is in the rear. Okay, you have, the front is a lot more narrow, but I appreciate your question. So what's going to happen is you got to decide whether you want to be on the outside of the inner fender well or the inside of the inner fender well. And chances are you aren't running the stock inner fender well anymore. Maybe you're not even running one at all. Okay, and that simplifies things greatly. Typically I run them straight or even a little bit in, and I rotate the shock mount. I just saw one in here, so I'll grab it. I rotate. So this shock mount, on the hoop, it can be down, it can be rotated up, right? So I rotate this out, which by the way I like, because then when you put the crossbar on, it's transferring the energy between the two towers. So all of that's important to get you what you want to do. Now, actually, if I just flip this back around, James, sure. Just go back over here, and I'm going to
Got a few more questions.
Can I zoom in on this?
No, easy. Mr.
There we go.
Cameraman.
Okay, so now, if you look at this setup, right, this is exactly what we're talking about, is the shock hoops. And that shock mount I was talking about can rotate around here, and then you transfer the energy between the crossbar. So ideally, you want these to go pretty straight up, but they could be leaned in a little or a little out. The reason I was going where I was going with the axle width and the tires is because when you articulate and you turn, you need to make sure that everything clears your shocks. Okay, I'm not worried about the frickin' hoop. I'm worried about your 2.5-inch shocks. Okay, because you've got a lot larger diameter that you need to make sure when that tire tucks up that you're able to clear. So those are important factors. So what I would do is I would tack this stuff together. I'd cycle the daylights out of that suspension. And by the way, this is why our tracer kit became so popular, because everything is set in one location. Okay, the Legend kit is a builder's kit. Okay, so you could make these shock hoops stick up through the hood if you wanted to and run 16-inch travel shocks. But what we did in the instructions, we just kind of tell you, like, here's the basic parameters, and it's up to you to then cycle whatever axles you choose, you know, whether they're junkyard or stock or, you know, out of a JK or a JL. The Legend kit is the one we give you all the variables for, and you can adjust everything around it in this kit. That's one of the beautiful things about this kit. What do you got, Jim?
Joe Alice, LJ Legend build. What is the ideal lean back and lean in for the front 14-inch coilover? Lower mount will be upper part of the C, full width axles on 40s.
Okay, so I think what he's asking about, let's spin back around, Jim. I think what this guy's asking about is this. Okay, so typically, and actually I turn it this way with the open side, okay? And I mount this thing, obviously you don't have anti-lock brakes and all that BS. I mount this so that it tucks around the upper ball joint. So I get this as far out to the wheel. I can't go here because then I'd be welding on top of it. So the first spot I can, weld this. This is where I put these. I'm pretty sure this is what he was asking. The other question about the upper shock hoops, I already answered for that other gentleman, unless it was the same gentleman.
Yeah, that part, not sure.
Someone else asked, does it matter which side the upper link is on the front?
The answer is, the short answer is no. Okay, but the reality is we've had better luck when it runs over the top of the differential. The suspension, because of the way the track bar is, seems to perform better. And you know, it's really just the right way to do it. Okay, because otherwise you're relying on the press fit and welds of this tube to hold the whole axle together. This is where all the force is being generated from, the low gear ratio. So to have this upper link right on top of it is ideal. And packaging is better. You know, I know you guys hear me say that all the time, but it's a lot easier to keep everything over on this side and give yourself, I think, James, they can see this, right? Yeah. This is the exhaust, okay? You don't want anything by this, all right? I don't want my joints over there. I don't want anything near it. It just melts. So, you know, we make those choices. And even if you're not building a Jeep, right? If you're building a buggy, if you're building a race car, these are the same considerations you have to talk about. And remember, simple things. And trust me, people don't get it right. They screw it up all the time. But from somebody who's been doing it for 20 years, I'm very well aware of all this stuff, and I plan around it big time. Yep.
Somebody asked, hello, GenRight. Thank you for the info. 1998 Jeep TJ on 40s with JKR axles and coil springs. Bought the Legend single triangulated back. What optional link positions would you recommend in the rear axle? Because it's got multiple.
Sure, the multiple settings.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is that you go with the highest position you can in the rear. Okay, now you need to double check this. I'm pretty sure that if you move to the highest position, the upper control arm is going to bash the bottom. Now, many like hardcore rock crawler guys will actually do what they call a doghouse. So they'll mark it on the floor where that control arm goes. They'll cut it through and they'll make a little piece of sheet metal up on the inside to allow that control arm to come up during, everybody wants their Jeep to sit as low as possible, right? And that's great. That's great. But you got to remember, then it's all about up travel. So that's what you'd have to do in that case. Yeah.
Do the front coilovers need to lean back from the front axle or straight up and down perpendicular to the axle?
Typically they lean back a little bit, just a little. The question I thought somebody was going to ask was, what should the angle be of the rear shocks? So if you take a control arm, and I know this is a little hard to see from your angle, James, but if you take a control arm, and I'm gonna turn sideways, a long arm suspension arm is probably going to be about that angle. Your rear shock needs to be 90 degrees to that, okay? And that's how simple that is. And we're talking about at ride height, okay? So almost always when we're building a Jeep, you want to build it at ride height or full bump. And then you want to cycle it and double check everything to make sure it all works. So just, and we talk about all this in our instructions. So, and I know I hear my guys on the phone all day long talking to people about all this stuff, so.
On this TJ, how many inches are you planning on stretching the front?
The front probably, it's hard to get away with much more than an inch on this one. So.
And is that the steering box thing, twisted pit
No,
iron
it's
thing?
it's the upper spring mount.
Okay.
That's because what happens is at droop like this, you can, it's not a big deal, right? But it's at full stuff, right? Otherwise, the bump pad on the axle is going to miss the bump pad that's up inside there. So you got to be careful. Now you can fake that a little bit by making a wider bump pad and have basically a bigger landing pad, so to speak, for the bump stop. I'll do whatever I can to get myself to that 100-inch wheelbase. So. And by the way, I'll be able to have a 23-gallon gas tank and still stretch this thing to as much as I want, because what I'm interested in is I want a full rear flare on this. And you can easily do that with 5-6 inches of stretch on these things.
Target Outdoors, isn't the JL Vector rear shock forward of 90 degrees?
It is. That's a different design, okay? Because we're still using a coil spring, right? The shock location isn't as critical. When you're talking about a coil over, I think the two people that were asking questions a minute ago were both Legend coil over customers. So I was giving information about coil overs.
Right, but a lot more adjustability with coil overs.
A lot
as
more,
opposed to
because
coils.
you've got a true dual rate spring. You can adjust preload. There's so many advantages. It would take a whole show for me to go through all the reasons why you should be running a coilover. All you need to do is look around, and when you go to an off-road park or to an event, everybody's running coilovers. Well, there's definitely a reason why. They don't just spend the extra $4 or $5 grand for no reasons.
Michael Costin, feel-wise, how will switching the rear shocks on the Vector change things? Switching to the front of the axle tube.
So we've adjusted for that in our part number. It does, the shock itself isn't as important because it's not a coilover. What matters is where the spring is. So I'll give you an example. So on an Ultra 4 car, we move the shocks forward, but it's a coilover, okay? Now what happens is that screws up your ability to rock crawl, okay? So that's why you see all these race car guys just bombing up stuff. So when the spring is mounted on the top of the axle or just behind it, it changes how the vehicle crawls. And most of you that are watching, want a vehicle that will crawl real good. So that's what we're giving you. Yep. What else you got? I mean, we could talk about suspension and geometry. Like
Yeah,
I've had entire
that's-
shows about that.
That's all I got right now. And someone just said, like, he already did a whole show about coilovers.
Yeah,
I
many
watched
shows.
I watched it, and that's why I decided to go coilover.
Yeah. But we do have more slides if we spin the camera around.
so I think
Okay,
I
let's
will
do that.
spin back around.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Questions on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get to the HDR.
Oh, here, I'll get this other one. Yeah, we've got, there's so much and so many options that you guys have. And the reason I started this Tech Talk show was to steer you guys right. There's so much misinformation out there, and people think that they can just simply bolt something on, like, hey, I have the same King coilovers you do, Tony. Why don't mine work? Well, look at how they're mounted. There's just everything makes a difference. So all of it's important, and the products we're selling you put everything in the proper location. So I appreciate that people are second guessing that, but we've got it figured out. Okay. All right. We're going to take a few minutes and talk about upcoming events. By the way, I've got more stuff here too. So our entire event calendar is on our GenRight website. All you have to do is go to the company tab, drop down, and you'll see all the runs and events. The main one that I'm talking about right now is High Desert Roundup, coming May 22nd through 25th. If you're in the greater Los Angeles area, this is an event you want to go to. Not only is it a Cal 4-wheel fundraiser, but this is a super fun event. There's great wheeling. It's right out in Barstow, which is just an hour outside of the greater LA area. A lot of people do come down from Central and Northern California for this one because it's such a good event and it's over multi-days, so it makes it worth the trip. You can come just for one day, or you can come for all the days. It's totally up to you. The registration price is cheaper if you're a Cal 4-wheel member. I also recommend that because that supports land use. These are the guys out there keeping our trails open. And as you know, we're always under threat of that. So this is a great way to come out and have fun yourself or with your family and give back to the off-road community by signing up for the event and participating, okay? So this is a trail called Pumpkin Eater. This is the big obstacle on that. Not everybody has to run this. There is a go-around, but there are challenging trails out here and there are easy trails. So here you can see JL on 37s. These are even ATs that you can get around and have a good time out there and not feel like you're beating up your vehicle. There's all different level of runs. That's what I'm saying. And that keeps it pretty fun for everybody. As you can see, a lot of people don't even have a hard or soft top on because the weather is perfect. And here you go, Shane's out there in the Wolverine with front and rear passengers. This is our elite suspension. You can see the flat belly skid and the double triangulated 4-link. He's running the 3.0 IBPs on there. So, and of course, Mickey Thompson tires. So. Here's a bunch of the people that came out with us last time. These are the people that actually camped with us. So camping is free if you sign up with the event. It's right off the highway behind the /X Cafe. And, you're going to see a video in just a second. All these people, we got to hang out at the fire and play cornhole and, go on trail runs and stuff, just have a good time. So this is a great event. These are the people that helped us run the Wet Lap, which is a Jeep game. And you're going to see that in the video too. Most of these people are people that work at GenRight. Some are ambassadors and just friends, you know, so it's a really fun thing to do. And here's the video. Is this on YouTube, Jim, this video?
Yeah.
So you can see all the GenRight Jeeps we've got out there. There's Jeff's Banshee. This is a bunch of people coming up Pumpkin Eater. There's Andrew and Pay Dirt. I'm having a little fun with the V8. There's Patrick and Shamrock. There's Jamie and the Growler. There's Jeff again and Banshee. There's Ed and the Gringo 392. That's one of our EXS builds. Here's Tommy, Sergeant Jeep in his JK. There's Kelly and Silver Surfer. Shane's out there in the Wolverine. We sit by the campfire and listen to music and roast marshmallows and tell war stories from the day, talk about the next day. There's the /X Cafe. They serve, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in there. Here we are in camp, just having a good time after one of the runs. And you can sit outside /X and hang out. Okay, here we are at one of the Jeep games. There she is she's actually trying to keep the water in the bowl. There you go, Andrew's doing a much better job. And then we keep track of how everybody does, and then you win a trophy if you do really well. So Alex believes positioning his hands this way give him an advantage.
This is Brian and my wife Susan. This is my name's Brian. Okay, Brian. Dennis is going to get in. That was my twin brother. Now Dennis is going to get in. I like it.
You can see, you know, there's some just mildly built Jeeps that are out there having just as much fun as everybody else. Kids have a great time at this, and with the warm weather, so what if you get a little wet? It's all part of the fun. Again, this is a fundraiser for Cal 4 Wheel, so we're turning in a bunch of cash. And of course, we sponsor this event with a bunch of raffle prizes and other fun stuff. And then we give out a sticker for your windshield for each year that you come, or your toolbox, or wherever you want to put it. So lots and lots of fun. I encourage you, like I say, if you're within 3 or 4 hours of here, it is absolutely worth the drive. Any questions on that, Jim?
Nothing left on that.
More on suspension stuff?
Well, the budget to be ready for the Black Hills experience from Troy Merritt.
Oh, perhaps. I mean, I'm going to work through this as fast as I can. I'm kind of juggling a lot of plates right now with trying to finish up Terremoto 2.
So that's a maybe.
Yeah. And that is in August.
Eric Brady said the Cal 4-wheel Jeep giveaway will be at the GenRight Jeep Night this upcoming Friday in Walnut Creek, California.
Oh yeah, he's our one of our Northern California ambassadors, so that's cool.
What IC 6 horsepower? Do you have any experience with a supercharger on a 4.7 stroker, or know anyone that runs one? Much cheaper than an LS swap.
Okay, here's what I can tell you. Everybody that I know of, and I know a lot of them, that have put on a supercharger or a turbocharger, I don't care what brand, within 6 months, that thing's been taken off and thrown in the garbage. So I wouldn't do it. You're just wasting your money. I don't care if it's cheaper. Just if you want more power, you got to suck it up and do it. So, and by the way, I'm the only one that's going to tell you that straight. Everybody else will, lie through their teeth and sell you whatever parts you want to buy. I'm like, I don't even sell V8s, so I got no skin in the game. You can do whatever you want. What else you got?
Okay, 2 more questions.
Sure.
What's the ability to do a tracer on an LJ with JK Rubicon axles?
A tracer on an LJ.
With JK Rubicon axles.
You're going to be limited to 37s. That's going to be,
Okay.
you know, you just don't have wide enough axles or beefy enough axles to run a 40. And I know you've seen other people out there. I know they put RCVs or whatever. Look, if you're going to spend all the money on that crap, buy real axles. Buy full 1-ton Curry axles, and you'll never think about it again. By the time you spend all the money to do all that stuff, you're within a few $100s of having the real McCoy with a ring gear that's almost twice the size, a pinion that is twice the size. Again, I'm sorry. I'm the only one that's going to tell you straight, don't do it, but you can do whatever you want. So let me know how it works out.
Will the gas pedal mount in a CJ7?
This, if you have a flat firewall, this will mount. I don't care if you have a Camaro, a Mustang, but whatever, a kit car. This is the best setup on the market for sure. I didn't want to build one. I looked around, I couldn't find anything. Everything out there is garbage, cheesy, made for, I don't know what it's made for. No, not good. And this is fully adjustable, so you can get the pedal ratio you want to make the throttle open the way you want. And that's huge. That is huge. Again, if you've never had the option, you don't know the difference. But once you know what the options are and you have that, it makes a huge difference. I can tell you, I noticed a difference. I'm going to go way back to when I was driving the YJ when it had a straight 6 in it, because I had a 4.2 in mine with a Carter carburetor. Well, one of the beautiful things about that was when you got on the gas, you had lots of pedal to modulate how the throttle responded, so you could be super smooth. I put the Mopar fuel injection on, and because the ratio of the pedal changed based on how the throttle body was on the Mopar fuel injection, the thing became like a throttle jockey, and it was jerky, and I couldn't get it to be smooth to save my life until I changed the ratio. So again, I knew what was possible, then I was chasing that and made it right, and that makes a big difference on how well you can wheel and how easy you can take it on your vehicle and your passengers and your gear. When you're jerky like that, it just thrashes everything. So.
Last question.
Mr.
West, I'm late. Are you throwing JL Rubicon axles under the budget TJ?
I am. Yeah, these are JL 392 Rubicon Recon axles. So fully geared, full float, with lockers. I bought the best thing I could get, including the bigger brakes, without having to mess with anything. So the first thing I'm doing is throwing away the knuckles and going high steer, GenRight high steer. So, and I hope that's all I do to these things, other than cut off some brackets. That's it. So, all right, that's going to conclude our show for tonight. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you next Wednesday.